Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nola Hennessy, and today is the day before the International Day of Peace. I'm standing in a beautiful park and I'm surrounded, no, you can't see them. There are geese, swans, ducks, and some other bird life. And I'm going to put a video at the beginning of this so that you can see the beautiful surroundings that I'm in. There is a little bit of traffic noise at school holidays in Queensland in Australia, and there's a lot of traffic in front of me, so I apologise if there's a level of background noise. What I want to talk about today are a couple of things. The fact that International Day of Peace is tomorrow and what that means, our current universal status according to the Secretary General of the UN, and empowerment of youth. So, International Day of Peace, you know, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, that's a day when everybody doesn't fight. And in my involvement with the United Nations Association over many years, and certainly my involvement in the Peace and Security Program working group here in Australia, it's important for us to understand that it's not just about one day where we're all peaceful and there's no fighting and we have a ceasefire. It's actually about living and breathing the principles of peace every day, and a way for us to reinforce that peace is actually the best way to go. In 2004, early 2004, I attended a longevity conference, and I was working within the Commonwealth Government of Australia at that time. And I went to this international conference to research longevity, and it was in the context of military members in the Australian Defence Organisation. And there was a number of speakers, there was a lot of facts that were presented, and I was particularly heartened by Dr. David Suzuki's speech about if we don't stop fighting and we don't stop polluting the earth, we will be extinct by the end of the century. So we're in 2023. We're almost a quarter of the way there. And according to Secretary General Guterres, we are not well placed relationship-wise globally. He has expressed concerns in New York just in the last 24 hours about not necessarily complacency, but a real shift towards just uncooperativeness. And I can't help but think that that's, centred around egos, power and control struggles, greed, corruption, and a blatant disregard for how personal power, when used in a bad way, has a knock-on effect, a strategic effect. When I talk strategy, I talk the breadth of impact. So in actual fact, 360 degrees around myself. What am I doing and saying that impacts everywhere around? What am I doing and saying that impacts far into the future? Is what I'm saying going to have a negative or positive impact in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years and more? And what impact is what I'm doing and saying having through all levels of the environments in which I operate? So in my family situation, in my organisation, within my clients, stakeholder and my networks, how is that impact having? Is it positive or negative? Is the impact something that I'd be pleased about, or that would make me feel guilty afterwards? So, this is a really fundamental time for us, and I know we're saying it about the climate, we're saying it about relationships. But if David Suzuki 20 years ago was highlighting if we don't stop fighting and don't stop polluting the earth, we will be extinct. We will make ourselves extinct. And we haven't actively listened to what's going on, what people are saying and what we're saying ourselves and what we're putting out there. If we're not doing anything about stuff and we're staying apathetic, as I said in an interview last December, with Cynthia Bryan on Voice America. One of the biggest threats that we have now, it's not just levels of violence, it's not just polluting the earth, it's actually that victim mode that human beings get into where, oh, it's all too hard, and the helplessness factor comes in. If we have apathy start setting in, then we are doomed to continue and grow what we're currently cementing in. And the Secretary General's talking about nations, you know, across the world, not being proactive enough, not embedding policies that make good change. All of those things is what he's referring to when he speaks. So we have a collective responsibility, and that's why I want to talk about how you, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a guardian, a supervisor, a manager, whatever you are in your life, a volunteer, an influencer, what you're doing to help empower the youth. Now, the youth that I talk about is the 8-year-olds through to potentially end of teenage years. You know, by 18, 19, we're talking about young adults. So there's a lot of attitudinal change that happens from when that early programming finishes to when the child exits high school and starts either going to college or starts travelling, working and so on, working full time. But as you know, if you're a parent or a caregiver or a teacher or an employer of a young person, it's really important that there are two, in my opinion, two critical things that you stay consistent with. And that is how they risk manage situations and the hazards and the threats that present to them. So what I'm going to do is refer you to ISO, International Standard 31,000. Google it, read it. It is pretty basic. It doesn't take a bachelor's degree to work out how to implement 31,000. If I think about this situation that I'm in and I say, okay, what are the threats or the hazards that are presenting to me that could present and could potentially create a risk for me? There are ground-based animals like snakes, other things, spiders, big bull ants, big biting bull ants. Those sorts of things are an immediate potential threat to me. But at the moment, no event has happened, so they haven't made themselves visible, and I therefore can't manage that risk event. But by simply staying alert, scanning my environment, understanding how I manage that risk event if it were to eventuate, they're the things that actually allow me to stay calm and relaxed and in control of myself under any circumstances. Now, if you think about an 8-year-old, they're not necessarily going to have the level of resilience and the wherewithal, the worldliness to understand themselves as well as they could. So you're teaching them what you can between conception and 7, and then when they get past that 7 years of age and they're into their grade school education, they're starting to form relationships outside of the family and the one-on-one with the parent kind of relationships. They're starting to bond and interact and get a feel for what interpersonal relationships are all about. That's when you need to help them understand their own personal power and how, when it's used positively and negatively, what the impact can be. At home, help them to understand what hazards and threats are. Electricity, stoves, falls from height, slips, trips, and so on. Start getting them into that mode when they're very young. You will empower them to not only manage any risk event that may present as they go through their youth years, you will also embed a risk management approach in them. So by the time they go into an employment situation, they're actually going to live and breathe risk management, which is so essential to effective decision making and good health and safety and good relationships in the workplace. The other thing that I think is probably the most important in empowering youth is teaching them how to actively listen. And if you yourself are the kind of person who goes into a room of people, you stand around, you kind of hear superficially what people are saying, but you're not wholly there, you're not present in the situation, you're not there mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're not holistically present, and you're not actively listening to what people are saying. So, in other words, if you actively listen, you can paraphrase back what somebody has said to you, or word for word speak what somebody has said to you. When you're actively listening, you're touching base with the person who's speaking, their emotions, their mental thought process. You're seeing their body language. You're understanding the energies that they're emitting into their surrounding space. All of those things will become evident when you are actively listening. So, in terms of youth, the value in teaching them how to listen is first of all, to understand themselves. So when you teach them about listening, get them to listen to themselves, listen to their internal dialogue as well as their own dialogue, the things that they say. Get them to understand whether there's a negative or a positive impact of what they're saying. Teach them how to paraphrase, teach them how to communicate. So, and I talk about this in No Boxing Allowed, when you're communicating, it's the communicator's job. In other words, in this situation, it's my job to make sure that I communicate in a way that is clear, unambiguous, that is factual, that's unemotive, so that you fully understand and have no doubt at all why I'm saying what I'm saying and what I'm saying. If the communicatee, the person receiving the message, is in a particular mindset though, you might say Monday and they'll hear Tuesday. And believe me, that happens. The communicator, as I have done myself, might say negative when their head is saying positive. So you've got to, when you're actively listening, you'll actually pick up oral errors that occur, and you'll be able to say to the person, oh, don't you mean such and such? You said this, but don't you mean such and such? What you're doing is you're showing a helpfulness towards individuals to refine their communication skills, and you're also honing your own listening skills. So for a child, if the child starts to speak in a negative, destructive, caustic, bullying kind of way, you don't punish them necessarily. You've got to help them understand why that's not good. Why that's not good in every context. Why, if they continue that attitude and those speaking behaviours, the tone of that will emanate to much broader than just themselves. It will have a long-term and through all layers of the family impact, and it won't produce the best possible outcomes for us as a wider humanity. The Secretary General, we have the Ukraine president speaking at the UN now, and as much as the negative rhetoric coming from, say, the Republican Party in the US that Zelensky's not a member of Congress, he's not the President of the United States, where's our return on investment? We've given all this money, what are they actually doing? What's their success plan? To me, that's incredibly arrogant because of the track record of the United States government in war anyway. Like, you don't preach a clean backyard when your own backyard actually is so dirty it needs a major overhaul. But Ukraine is in a unique situation where they are surrounded in reality. They are fighting against they're fighting to achieve a certain principled outcome, as well as fighting for the humanity of their own country. So for the sake of their own country's infrastructure, for their people, for their system of living, for their environment, for their future. They're fighting for a whole lot more than just, how many bombs can be dropped and how many people can we kill off from the enemy and how many buildings can we save. There's more to it than that. And it's, Zelensky pointed out about, for the UN to allow threat actors to still be present and make decisions about global security. He didn't say it, but it actually is, it's an oxymoron. Why would you have a known terrorist nation, a threat actor that is openly engaged in invasive war now having an important stake in decisions about global security when they're going against every one of the principles of peace? So, these discussions that are happening now, get your youth involved, get them to listen, talk about International Day of Peace with them and what it means. Talk to them about what Secretary General Guterres is saying, what Zelensky is imploring the UN Security Council to consider doing. Get them to be involved. They're old enough. By 8, they're starting to form their own opinions. They should know what's right and what's wrong, and they should start to be empowered to actively listen to other people and what they have to say, and to start that dialogue that gives us a positive resolution. I hope you have a really meaningful International Day of Peace tomorrow, the 21st of September. I'll be posting this video and sending an email to my network on that day, and I really trust that we can start to see that positive use of personal power is far better outcome for humanity than this continued negative rhetoric, war fighting, abuse, harassment and power and control struggles. I wish you a wonderful rest of week, and I'll see you next time for the next episode. Bye for now, folks.